Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a different perspective than most. We do it from the neoclassical perspective, asking ourselves each day what happened in the market with respect to trend, supply and demand, and what does it tell us about tomorrow. I do a show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Folks, I'm glad you could join me. We got a big day tomorrow. We had the ECB, BOE today. They did nothing. We probably should take a look at what that means first and then segue into our markets. I got a couple people asking me for a couple things to look at. If you have things, drop them in there. I'll try to look at them. Yesterday, it was the first show that I think I've done that I was unable to get to all the questions, and that was a first, and that was actually kind of exciting. I hadn't done that before, and that's cool. That says that people want to know things, and hopefully I can try to answer them. So let's segue in here real quick. Take a look at the ending numbers to start with. So what do we got here? We got the major indexes up. Let's pop over to the closing quotes. So, nothing really big here. The only thing that was down big was the NDX. Everything else was pretty flat. So the NDX down 35.52, down 14, almost 15 points. Today was the first day we saw Google finally turn. Google's been up forever, it seems. Apple down big, Google down big. Last night we looked at Apple. There was that numerology setup I talked about in Apple. You can find all kinds of patterns, and I don't even try anymore. But APL, I used to do that in a farmer life. But and also somebody was talking about that downtrend line last night. I drew it in after hours there. But it just didn't happen. This thing popped up, gave it up, came all the way back down. This thing closed under a swing point low today. If you pull it up on the TA Today charts, that is a swing point low there on the 1218 bar. You're underneath it, right? That's going to try to break a little bit lower. It's going to try to come back into these bars. So Apple looks like it's in trouble. Google finally turned. That thing's been just climbing and climbing and climbing. Nothing big here, just turned finally. I guess, people decided to take some profits. And the other big horse, there's three big horses. These guys account for 33% of the index. You put them with the SMHs, you got 2/3 of the index. Microsoft, that one's trying to break down. It's going to go after this low. And then if we look at the SMHs last night, the SMHs got that big push off the Micron news, and what did? They came right back. Okay, let me segue over to where I was going to start with, and let's talk about what's happening in these markets. So let me grab my charts here, and I want to start with the world markets. In particular, I want to start with where it all happened today, and that is in Europe. So what was happening in Europe? Let's get this in the right spot so you can see. So what was happening in Europe? Well, we had the ECB, we had the BOE. Both of those guys told us we're not going to change anything. We're going to leave everything the same. And then, Draghi is like the master talker. I don't see anybody that can get what they want with these central banks without actually doing something. This guy doesn't do anything. He just talks about doing something. And that's what he said today. He says, if we're going to have deflation, no problem. I got lots of tools in my toolbox. Sounds like a Bernanke story. And I'm not afraid to use them. And remember, it was a year and a half ago. Remember he came out with that famous statement, we will do whatever it takes? He never did anything other than to say that he would do it. But what's it doing? German, DAX. This has been the strongest guy. These guys were up this morning. They gave it up. They came back. Volumes expanded. They're going to go back in there. Now remember, this retested and regenerated higher. You got a 3-day bounce out of it. Now you're coming back. You're going to come back into that. It looks to me like it's going to break it. that looks like it's going to break to me, and you're going to come down. And let's get the little marker up here. It looks to me like you're going to come down and try to close the gap down here, down in this area. You can see some support in here. Two big bars. You had the big bar up here. That just looks like it's going to give it up. Go to the weak guy, CAX. The CAX gave it all up. Couldn't hold it. It's fixing to break. CAX is right on the verge of breaking. Remember, we've got the big bar here, the big bar there. You know, right? You don't see in strong markets, you don't see these kind of bars show up on the downside, especially, you know, this. Why did that? Well, because it broke all these swing point lows. It set up another swing point low here, and of course you got the one at the bottom. You got some decent volume on the bottom, but this one, you know, we had that quadruple witching day. That's this bar for them, December 20th. It looks to me like it's going to come back into that area, and so that's this bar. It looks like it's going to come back into that area. You can see the support there outlined in green, and the big gap is down here. So I would think ABCD structure, if you do the ABC, draw it in right off of this bounce, and we were talking about it, it's going to take it right back down into support. That looks to be where it's trying to go. The last one, FTSE. FTSE, same sort of scenario. FTSE had been stronger and finally starts to give it up. Again, volume trying to expand. The quad witching is down there. You can see a support zone in it. It's the same scenario. They all three have the same sort of setup. They all want to try to break lower. This one wants to come back down into there. If you do a range trade breakout, what does it do? It gets you right into the range there. That looks to be where that one's trying to hit. So Europe, back on the map on the downside. If I look over in Asia, we had two strong indexes. One was Taiwan, the other was Japan. Taiwan had came into the retest regen zone right here, got its little bounce, and look at the bars on the bounces. Tails on both of them. Now you start to come back and volume just expands. This thing's going to go down and test the very bottom of this at least, it looks like to me. And I suspect it's going to do a retest regen off of this and get you all the way down to that low. So that low, let's get a number on that. Looks to be about 83.78. So if I take this off, put in the ABCD structure now, you know, because they're all setting them up now. ABCD structure, what does that do? That gets you down about there. Where's that? Right in there. You know, it's amazing. You can't make these things up. Why do they always line up like this to where you get these kind of things set up? Right where it should go, ABCD structure takes you back to that point. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but you can start to see these things when they line up coming right to an area they probably should come to. And now that we're into this support zone tonight, that will redraw. It'll tell you where the next area is. Still going to be up here at this high, but it's probably going to be one right there, draw in tomorrow. And the other strong one, Nikkei. Now the Nikkei came back in today, got a little bounce at the end of the day, but this one's coming. Remember, it came in to do the retest regen as well. Did the retest, regenerated higher, actually had some nicer looking bars on that regen, but this one also looks to come back now. Right? It's doing the same thing. Volume expanding over here. You got an ABCD structure in place. This thing looks like it can come down deeper, probably into these big bars. We got a big one here. It's right at the top of that one. You can see that's the little zone on the ABCD structure it will try to get into. So the strongest indexes also look like they're going to try to sell down. And then if we go look at some of the weaker stuff, they're breaking down. Brazil breaks down under the lows today. And let me pull this out so you can see the weeklies as well. Breaks under it, breaks under a swing point low as well over here. That's a break on multiple swing points, multiple time frames. You guys have heard me say it enough. Those lead to high probability trades to the downside. It's not as strong. I mean, we've only got two breaks, but there are two. That's multiple time frames, short term, intermediate term. that should lead to 2 to 3 bars to the downside on the longest time frame, which is the weekly. Looks to me like it's going to try to come back into the tops of the low, right? So that low, get a price point on it, is 47,674, and we traded into about 58 today. I mean 48, 49, 259. So that's still a pretty good chunk on the way down. Excuse me. The other ones that are weak, I mean that's one of them, and Hang Seng. The Hang Seng market, same sort of scenario, right? ABCD structure potentially on the downside. This is a key area it needs to hold. You can see the volume there. I mean, you can see the low on that bar. It's 22,463. That also corresponds with this low, right? You just broke a low, bounced off of it. Now you're going to try to come down. If you do the ABCD structure here, you get the same sort of scenario, right? A to a B, and now potentially to a C, D structure. That price point's going to get you into, or it's going to get you beyond this, which can lead to a faster move, 2 to 3 bars. Where's probably the support? Looks like it's about right there, off of this bar. And that's this volume bar. And let's get the date on that guy. That is August 12th. Okay, so I go overseas, and what I see problems. Let's go back to our markets now. And I'm sure you know where this is going, don't you? Here we go, general markets. Let's start with the S&P. The S&P's been the strongest. And the S&P, if we look at it, never did come back to do the retest regen. And I wrote an article about this 2 or 3 days ago saying that more than likely we weren't going to step up to new highs. We were probably going to fail and come back because these retests needed to happen still, and we'd already had 2 of them do it, which increases the likelihood that the rest will. It's just like anything else. Once you start seeing those ABCD structures like we just looked at, right, they start setting up everywhere. And then once they start breaking, they all start breaking. It's just, markets are interrelated. It's not as if they're, islands of themselves, other than our market, which seems to be an island to everything, doesn't care about anything. But this looks like, that's where it wants to come. Is there anything in this chart that tells you that? Not really. You had 2 dojis. You got big news tomorrow with the employment number. That could go either way. It doesn't tell you anything. But if you look elsewhere, as we just did, it looks like those markets are going to be under pressure. If so, then that should put some pressure on us. Should is the key word here. Dow Jones looks the same as the S&Ps, not really telling us anything, still hanging at the highs. Tried to break down today, couldn't. They come in, they buy it. Still, what is this? 2, 4, 6, 7 bars range trade. You're actually still trading into the December 26th bar. So that's roughly 2 weeks sideways now. Now, let's go to what failed today. NDX. NDX was trying to come in. Remember, I was talking about the January 2nd bar is the bar that you want to be looking at on most of these. It's true of the SPX, the NDX, the Russell, the IXIC. The tops were the bars, just like on the Dow. So the 5s, 3 of them were this. That bar, 35.7703. We trade to 35.79. So we get over it. We come back under it, right? But we had more volume. So it's a failure on price, but not on volume. The Russell. The Russell was also playing with that same bar. December 2nd bar. Goes over it, back underneath it, fails on price, but also has more volume. And that would make sense because that bar, it was the first day back at the end of a week. Most people still on vacation. So, I don't try to read things into it, but I do try to be logical about it. So both of them fell on price, not on volume. The broad NASDAQ gets over the highs, right? Again, over the highs, more volume, fails on price, back underneath. When you see that kind of action, and it has, more volume, that says it can go back up there and do it again, right? So you have to, factor that in. But I want to bring up one more thing here before I make a conclusion, and that is if I go over to the OX markets and I take a look at those bonds. Remember, the bonds and the interest rates are inverse. Interest rates been trying to push the 3% on the 10 years. Today, the bonds, actually before today, they did something already, which is uncommon, and that is that they had a break of this low on a weekly. They broke it here. They also had a break of this low and this low on the daily. They got 2 bars down, bounce up, another bar tried to go lower, had some decent volume, but it couldn't stick, and now it's going back the other way. And if you look close there, you've actually got an ABCD structure to the upside now, right? That ABCD structure takes it right back up to these highs to test them, for one thing. But more importantly, and if I take this off, is this retest region has failed now. In other words, we came back in after a break of a swing point low, tried to retest it, and then break back down, but no, it's going the other way. So not only did it fail to carry to the downside as it should have off this weekly break, it's now giving you strength to the upside. And if I put that with all the other stuff I just talked about, that tells me we're going to sell down tomorrow. We're not going to break out. Now, because of the volume characteristics on the indexes, you actually could get the worst of all possibilities. And let me describe that to you real quick. I'm going to go back, and the SPX has been the strongest, so I'm going to use it as the guinea pig, so to speak. And let me pull this back in now. So if I put the SPX up here again, so given, and actually I want to come in, I'm going to zero in with this guy and use this guy. And let's see if it shows up correctly. Let's get it lined up. I didn't have time to line all these up today. Alright, so that's pretty good. And I'm gonna pull this in to say 10 days or something and put it on like a 60 minutes. Alright, so you have, here's the worst scenario that could happen for the bulls. You have this ledge that's been building up, both sides of it now, for 3 days, right? It's just been going up here and it's in this little range. This was the gap down bar. This is the big bar on the way down. You spiked up today on the open and you tried to, just gap out of here, right? But they brought it right back. They brought it back hard, and they pushed it right back down to the lows, and then you bounce right back up to the end of the day to hang up here for the employment numbers tomorrow. The worst scenario would be this, and that is that tomorrow when the numbers come out, and remember they come out before the market opens, the worst scenario would be for the gap up, to here or wherever, but somewhere gap up big, right? 10, 11 S&P points, and then to try to push, right? But fail, right? Because what does that do? It forces buyers to come in because it looks like it's going to break out, yet in the end it actually fails and comes back the other way, and the bar to watch tomorrow would be this bar. And I'm on intraday, so you have to pull it up on your intraday to look at it. But if you come up into here and you can't get over it and you fail and this thing starts to escalate back down, then what have you done? You've trapped everybody up here, right? And they're going to have to sell it on the way down, which will push it faster, which will escalate it, which will take it all the way back down into that support zone, the retest regenerate zone. That to me is probably the worst case scenario, because what will happen is that will be a fast move back. Now, the good part about that, if it happens that way, is the fast move back will more than likely get bought, right? And even though it will look like a painful, we're going to fall out of, we're just going to fall out of bed, when it gets back into this region here, that would actually be a good place to consider, depending on how it comes back, the potential buy, and that's a much better place to buy it than up here. So if you're wanting to be bullish, just be patient tomorrow. Top of that bar, what is it? Let's get a number on it here. Top of that bar is 1845.86. If you gap up and you can't hold that bar, look out below, because it's probably going to escalate. All right, let's go to your questions here and see what we got. Let me take the ones on email first, because if I don't, I'll forget them. And these guys, when they write me early, I try to take them in order. So let's do that. So the first one has to do with Chanling asked me about UNG. Let's take a look at UNG, see what we got there. So let me pop over to UNG and see what this looks like. Let me pull this out. Whoops, not that one. Let's pull this. If I can grab it. There we go. So you can see dailies and weeklies. Okay, so the question is hit support, but what about volume? Okay, so volume escalates what is that, almost 12 million back into 10 million. Yeah, so that's not good. Okay, so the low here is 1945. We got to 1947. So the good thing is it didn't test the bottom yet. It will tomorrow. And what you want to do is you want to see how it tests that bottom and what it does with it. When you come in this hard, you are going to hit that bottom, and this hard and this deep, you're going to hit the bottom. So tomorrow the question will be is what does it do with the bottom? Just glancing at it, looks to me like it's going to hit it hard again, but we'll see. Because volume is escalating on the weekly as well. Okay, well, look at here. Here's what's probably going to happen though. You have a swing point high here that hadn't been retested yet, right? And that retest, the bottom, it's coming into it now doing the retest. The bottom is 1919, and the volume breakout was this bar, which was 35 million, and so far we're doing 28. So if volume's more than if volume's more than 4 or 5 million tomorrow, and that's 10, yeah. So that's the scenario. You want to see it test this bottom, maybe get as deep as the bottom of this retest regen zone, and have only 4 or 5 million. If that's the case, it probably ends up being a buy. If it's not, then you probably don't want to buy it, and you're just going to have to wait. I wouldn't short it, but I wouldn't buy it. And this thing gaps around so much, you can't really put ABCD structures in place. The one that was there is already done, so nothing to say there. So that's what that looks like. I would that's the scenario I'd be looking for to try to buy it. All right, another question over here. Can I look at Kirk? Sure I can. Let's see what that one looks like. And then let me see what the rest of these are so I can type them in together. KIRK, TLT, LUV, YOKU. I was supposed to do those last night. Those are the ones I missed, huh? Alright, let's look at what those are. So Kirk, we'll start with that one. That was the first question. So what do we got here? This is in the consumer discretionary. Looks like it's home furnishings. Yeah, this is home furnishings. These guys had an amazing run. They went all the way back and made new highs on the monthly. Well, you just got to let it come back into this bar and see what it does. 2042. That's the November 18th bar. That's where you want to let it come back into, see what it looks like. Because if you look at it on the weekly, do I have the weekly up here? Yeah. If you look at it on the weekly, that's 2042, which is also here, right? That's kind of the key area. You had, you know, if you put them all together, you had a wide price spread bar here. You had the wide price spread bar there. Here you got the volume escalation. That becomes very strong support, right? That should hold. If that doesn't hold, then something's definitely wrong. So this is the zone. This is where you want to try to buy it. And escalation isn't that bad on the way back. That's going to be a nice little setup if it gets in there. It probably isn't going to have volume. You got now the only thing that you got going on here that's a little bit worrisome is an ABCD structure that measures deeper, right? Let's do the calculation real quick on that. So that's 26 and a half. That's 20. That's 5. That's about 480. And let me clean this up. 480 and this number. It takes you down to 1918 something. Yeah, that's the only thing that's worrisome. It doesn't have to complete it, but that is an ABCD structure on the way down. And that is the right measurement. So make it come in there and you know, hold and try to bounce. I think what you'll get is you'll get a complicated ABCD structure. This thing will bounce, come back up to the top. So you buy it here, you try to target that top. That's your sell. If you're selling, I don't know if you're accumulating or selling or what you're doing. So that is a good one. I'll have to put that on my list. I like that setup. Kirk, nice one. Next question, what do we got here? We got Federico asking me about the ones last night. Love, airline. So this is Southwest Airlines, and they broke out, and they're breaking out on all time frames. Yeah, that was a good one, but it's already broke now. I don't know what you do with it. You just watch it, wait for a retrace. There's really not much else you can do. It's a good one, but you gotta wait for a setup. I don't see a setup there. Yoku, let's see what this one is. So Yoku is isn't this Chinese technology or something? Let me see what they are. Yeah, internet provider, like Sohu and some of the others. Okay, so this is pushing up, doing a retrace. I try to make it come back into this bar. That's where all your volume is. That's where your support is. It's the bottom of the wide price spread breakout. So that's the spot. So something close to 31.40 to 31.77. So about 31.75 back to 40 is the spot. And that's a decent setup as well. Let's see here. What else? What was the other one? TLT. Let's look at TLT right quick. I'm running out of time again. Okay, so TLT. Oh, actually, I already covered TLT. So you already got my news there. So you said you're short on it. Juan says, I'm short on it with a basis around 102.40. Would consider adding to this position at 103.50. No, I wouldn't add on 103.50. I just talked about an ABCD structure. It takes you almost back to these highs. I think we'll get the answer first thing in the morning probably with that employment news. That's either going to spike this up or down. it looks to me like this market is going to try to trade off. So you may get a strange reaction where rates spike up, right? In other words, bonds come down, the market rallies, and then it flips around and rates go the other way, and the market comes back. Because it would be the fear trade into bonds, fear trade into gold, for example. So I think tomorrow morning, of course, is going to be the number, but no, I wouldn't try to add there. If I'm adding up towards these highs. In particular, I'm looking at this bar now, 104.84. All right, folks, I got to let it go here. Thanks a lot. Big day tomorrow. 6 days sideways basically to start the year. Tomorrow's probably going to stretch that boundary. Either topside or downside. Looks to me like downside. Have a great night. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you on Sunday, and we'll wrap it up and see what we got. Take care. Good night, folks.